You're listening to Sharkbone, a Las Vegas role-playing game podcast. This episode, episode 1, is being recorded on Saturday, March 20th, 2010. My name is Devin.
And I'm Jarvis.
And welcome to the show. This is our first show ever.
Ever in the world.
Yes, ever in the world. So, may stumble around a little bit, but hopefully we can fix that with editing. Make ourselves sound smarter. So first off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we're not. We don't like certain things that happen in podcasts, and we're going to try and stay away from that. One, we don't want to wander.
Wander, you mean sidetrack?
Yeah, sidetrack.
Yeah, too many podcasts. Have a lot of awesome discussion, but that discussion often has very little to do with role-playing. And personally, when I listen to a gaming podcast, I want them to be talking about things that are useful to my game.
Exactly. We also want to keep things simple enough to where people listening to it can understand it, but we don't want to dumb it down so much that it's not fun to listen to.
Yes. No big words. No GNS theory. No,
I don't even understand GNS theory.
Player agency. Have you ever read any of Vincent Baker's blogs?
No, I can't say I have.
Okay. The guy that wrote Dogs?
Yeah.
I tried to read one of his posts the other day and couldn't understand it. Like, it's so far over my head. It reminds me of, like, taking philosophy classes and trying to piece together information from it. It's ridiculous. Like, I mean, the guy makes good games, and he's probably a genius or something, but it's far beyond anything I'm capable of comprehending.
Yeah, I seem to have that problem when I'm on the story games forum as well.
Yeah, it happens sometimes there.
Some of those conversations I just don't get.
And, Vincent Baker's like twice that much.
Oh, boy.
It's ridiculous.
Another thing we're going to try and not do is name dropping. It's kind of, I don't know.
It's annoying to me when I listen to a podcast. Is what it is.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially around like the story games community, tend to be very cliquish, and it seems like they are talking about themselves to themselves. And
yeah, that's not what we're about. We're about talking about games, how to make your games better, what you can do.
Yeah. Regular stuff. By regular gamers, for regular gamers.
Yeah, there you go. And you're probably not going to hear any bumpers on Sharkbone either.
No, bumpers are annoying.
Yeah, they are. They're commercials. If I want to see commercials, I'll turn on the TV.
They are commercials.
If I download something to listen on my podcast or on my iPod, I want it to be something that's worthwhile.
Put ads on your site if you want some commercial revenue. Put ads for other podcasts on your site, but not on the air.
There you go. So now, I think we've covered what we're not about. Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, let's kind of shift into what we are about. Jarvis and I have come to a show plan. We've decided we're going to have 2 sections in each show, pretty much.
Yes.
Every show that follows this format. First, we're going to have a section that we've called the GM Garden, where we take a piece of popular media, be it a movie, TV show, book, something like that, and we'll talk a little bit about what we liked and what we didn't like about it and how we can adapt that story to a game. How you, as a GM, or even as a player, can take items from that media and turn it into backstory for your character or an interesting twist in your game.
Absolutely. I don't know how much you do this, but I do it all the time. And every time I watch a movie or read a book or read a comic or even hear about other people's game, I'm constantly thinking of ways that can improve my game and ways I can pull story ideas from that. And favorite villains, the villain from Serenity, for example, is fantastic. Probably one of the best villains I've ever seen.
Yeah, he is.
Anywhere.
Oh, man, that's...
And
he's
that
intense.
guy, completely believing that everything he's doing is the right thing to do, even though it's horrible and evil.
Yeah, he even recognizes it's horribly evil.
Even better. And yeah, that's awesome. So
it's great.
If there's no reason why something like that can't make your game better.
Exactly. We also have our second segment is called Grease Monkey, where we talk about mechanics, role-playing, different things that you can do, maybe some game aids, things that can improve your gameplay.
Props, tools that you can bring in.
Exactly.
Things that make our games easier, things that might help you in your games.
Things that we've tried that we haven't liked.
Lots that we've tried and we haven't liked. Things we've heard other people do that we might want to give a shot.
Yeah. For today's GM Garden segment, we just finished watching the movie Soldier.
Soldier with Kurt Russell, 1996.
It's a bit dated, but it was a good movie. I'd never seen the entire thing before.
It's a fantastic movie.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, what jumped out at you about that movie that you could transplant into one of your games?
One of the first obvious thing probably is that we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, by the way, if you care. I get really annoyed when people stop and say, spoiler alert. So, let's assume that you're hearing about this movie, so you've either seen it or you're going to go see it, but we're going to spoil the plot for you, probably.
Yeah, I think that's unavoidable.
That's safe? Absolutely. So the first thing that jumps out is that Kurt Russell is a born and bred soldier, part of like a government program to create the perfect war machine, and he has no feeling, no humanity, no sympathy. He's just a beast. So maybe there's some kind of mercenary group in your game. Maybe you're playing a modern day game, and there's one country decides to up its military and bring in some super soldiers. Maybe you're playing like a fantasy game, D&D or something, and there's a group of bandits that are kidnapped from birth and then raised to be bloodthirsty mercenaries or something.
Sure.
And just the lack of humanity alone means they're going to do a lot of stuff to a lot of people that we wouldn't think is right.
Yeah.
Pretty horrific.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed about the movie that I thought was really cool was right at the beginning they establish how much of an awesome soldier, how perfect he and his generation of soldiers, so to speak, are.
What do you mean? What did they do specifically?
Well, they show them through their training regimen all these horrible things that they are exposed to as children. The scene where they have to watch the dogs tear apart the boar, or when...
and they're forced to watch it. They can't even look away.
Exactly. And then there's the scene where I think it was Kurt Russell's character, Todd, that is their children, maybe 8 years old, and he's just beating the crap out of another student in a classroom. No one stops it. He just beats him until he stops moving, stands up, sits back down at his desk. It's like, all right, done.
Didn't they mark like an A+ in his little profile sheet that they had after
I think
that
so.
scene? I think they did.
I think so.
They marked down, this guy shows promise for aggressive quality.
And then after they establish how much of a hard soldier he is, they introduce somebody that's supposedly better.
Yes. It's like 5 minutes into the movie.
So you could do the same thing to your party. Say you've gone through, take D&D for instance, because I think that's mainly where the characters are heroes, and they're the best.
Usually.
There's no one better than they are.
Usually not. Yeah, epic heroes, they're the guys that are going to save the world. They're the adventuring party from Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
They're the movers and the shakers.
So, people say that, by stretching yourself you grow. Maybe present someone that's supposed to be better than the characters are.
Would it be fun to play a game where you make the player characters that are heroes, but they're not the movers and shakers? Like, there are people that are bigger, stronger than them, that are moving around in the world. They're the ones that are killing dragons and things, and you're the ones that are doing the little jobs. That would be interesting. And then you're almost trying to stay out of the way of the bigger guys.
Yeah, and I think it would be cool if those bigger guys had an openly antagonistic role.
You've never played Exalted, right?
No, I haven't.
So when I played Exalted, one thing I noticed, the game, kind of defaults itself as a high fantasy game from White Wolf, if anybody doesn't know. It kind of, the default setting is that you play as solars, which are heroes with the power of the sun itself.
Okay.
The god of the sun imbues you. You're kind of like Hercules running around.
All right.
Kicking butt. And as the biggest and the baddest heroes that have just recently returned to the world, there's very little in the game that can give you pause. It's possible that, just after a few games and a little bit of experience, your solar hero can actually defeat an army of 100 men.
All right.
Regular men. The problem is, when I tried to run the game, the more experience the solars accrued, it quickly came to a point where, unless, say, the sun god himself came down to put his children back in line, there was very, very little that was going to oppose you or get in your way or anything of the sort. So it became just like a ridiculously epic level game where there was no kind of opposition I could put up against the heroes. So I think if I was ever going to run Exalted again, what I would do is have the players not play solars, even though they're kind of the default characters in the game.
All right.
I would have them play the little guy. There are solars running around in the world, and you're trying to survive, but these guys are bigger than you. They're stronger than you. You're trying to stay out of their way. If you gang up, you might be able to take one down. Because that way, if there's nothing that can give the players competition, if there's no contest for them, then there's no fun in the game. There's no drama. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Exactly. I've always thought that there needs to be something that puts into contrast what exactly the character is capable of.
It was just like playing Doom on God mode.
Okay, I could see
That's exactly what it was like. I mean, you rolled some dice and kind of told a story. It was kind of fun, but there was no contest. There was no fear. There was no tension.
See that.
There was no drama.
Yeah,
you just walked over everything.
Makes sense. If you are epic and everyone else is level 2 or 3, nothing's gonna stop you.
So I think maybe a key ingredient in a role-playing game is to make sure that there's something out there that's bigger than the heroes.
I like it.
Or better.
Yeah.
Maybe not bigger. Fiercer. Maybe not better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Maybe, like, right now we're playing a werewolf game. Maybe if you were playing a Hunter the Vigil game, instead of having just a pack of cubs, have it be, I don't know, maybe like the Avatar of Wendigo.
Oh.
Because the hunters, what can the hunters do against that?
Really not much.
They're humans.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to have to get out of the way. Or die.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what else? Shout out to
Soldier. Let's see. There's Trash Planet.
Yeah, that was cool.
Which was awesome to me. The vast majority of the movie takes place when Kurt Russell's character gets dumped onto a planet that's basically a landfill. It's obviously a science fiction game. That's why they go to or science fiction movie. That's why they go to different planets. But humanity apparently has started dumping all its trash on this one planet, and Kurt Russell gets dumped there. He finds some refugees there, and the rest of the plot ensues. But I love the idea of these people that have like crash landed, or maybe they lived there before the planet was classified as a trash planet, and he just started dumping stuff on them.
Yeah, I think that's what they said happened. That they found this out of the way planet, and all of a sudden these dumpers came and started dumping stuff.
Yeah, maybe they tried to make a home for themselves. But I love the concept of this of an entire planet or an entire region that is almost completely inhospitable. It was kind of like a desert wasteland type of thing, almost like Dune.
Right.
And they had to try and, like, the only thing they ate was just, whatever food they would find in the trash, because the only animal life that really seemed to be around was extremely poisonous snakes. And
yeah, it was kind of weird.
It was strange for them to live in the desert, but that's okay, because it was necessary for the plot of the movie. But the trash planet served as a very cool setting and backdrop. And you had these people just trying to get by, trying to eke out a living in this extremely inhospitable waste.
Yes, it was it was different setting. I don't think I've ever set a game in a place like that. It could also be an interesting kind of plot hook, maybe in some downtime between adventures, or big plots. The character's just sitting there, and then someone invades their home, whatever it is, and starts putting something there that they don't want.
That's interesting.
Yes. What if you were? Well, werewolf's a good example. I mean, right now our werewolves are up north fighting against some tainted company. What if after we wipe those guys out and go home, slap each other on the back, say good job, let's take a rest. We're sitting there, all of a sudden a landfill opens up in our backyard.
Yeah, just something you don't want. It could be a landfill, could be trash, could be undesirables moving in, whatever they be in your game. Maybe here's a fantasy example. Maybe the heroes go out to adventure and defeat the dragons and save the world, and they come back and they find out that their town, like the Shire from Lord of the Rings or something, their little hometown that they left, has now been annexed, and it's basically the backyard of a like orc tribe or something. And so now these orcs have moved in, and your people are slaves, and they've set up, I don't know, what would orcs set up in what used to be your town?
I don't know. A mine?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe they just make some giant strip mine. Or they tear out all the trees, and
it could even be a human lord moves in, and before your town was a freehold, now all of a sudden it's serfdom.
Absolutely, yeah, and everyone's basically enslaved.
Yeah,
and they're working the fields, but they don't get any of the profits in the crops. It all goes to the lord.
Exactly.
That would be cool.
You return home and see your father getting 15 lashes in the square. What do you do?
Yeah. 15 lashes in the square because he tried to steal food for your family, like your mother and your sisters and stuff that you left behind, and now the new government says that that's against the law. Trying to steal food, of course, from his own crops that he planted, which were his family for generations.
Exactly. Exactly.
That would be cool.
That would be interesting. I think that's a game I'd like to run.
How we got on that from a sci-fi movie about soldiers, I'll never know. But there you go. That's how this works, really. You watch something, you read something, and
inspiration comes.
Exactly.
Inspiration A leads to B, leads to C, sometimes leads to Y.
And sometimes leads to sometimes Y.
That idea we just came up with, that would work really well for a Vampire Earth game.
Yes, it would. With the once the vampires take control and start putting up new governments and.
Actually, I think that already happened in the novels, didn't it?
Do things like that. Well, yeah, to an extent. But they don't. It's kind of a slow thing that seems to happen to everybody. So it's not really you go away for a while and then come back, and all of a sudden this drastic new thing is there that has changed.
Right.
So that's very cool. Didn't that happen at the end of the Lord of the Rings books?
I don't know. I didn't read the books. I started reading the first one, and I just couldn't get through it.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah.
Some people adore them. Some people find them dry. But I believe at the very end, because I was looking forward to it in the last movie, and they didn't show it, and it was one of my favorite scenes. At the very end of the Lord of the Rings book, all the little hobbits return back to their hometown.
Okay.
And their hometown is under bandit control. Like this bandit gang has moved in because they're on the run or something, and so they're hiding out basically, and have kind of enslaved or taken over all these little hobbits that live there. So then all of a sudden these four guys return back, and they're like, we've killed dragons and defeated ancient wizards and powers that you have never even seen. So they mobilize all their friends and family into a little resistance force and take back their town.
Oh wow!
And that's the end of their little epic hero story. It's really cool.
That's nice. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely like to do something like that in a game. That would be very interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we can roll right into our next segment.
Sure. Roll into the next segment. Was that your segue?
Yeah.
Our next segment's about dice, right?
Yep.
And we're rolling into it?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
That's pretty smooth.
Our Grease Monkey segment for today is all about dice pools, which is very near and dear to our hearts. We like dice pools.
Yes. I would say the more dice, the better, but that's not entirely true. You can hit a point.
Yeah, you can. I've sat down and written out the numbers, and I know that once you get to a certain point, it's just ridiculous. You don't need any more. You've got enough. But why a dice pool?
Why a dice pool? If I roll one die, let's say a die with 20 sides, for example.
That sounds like a good example to me.
So if I roll this die with 20 sides, every time I roll it, I have the same exact chance to get any number between 1 and 20.
Yes.
I have a 5% chance of a critical failure. I have a 5% chance of a critical success. I have a 5% chance of rolling a 3.
Yep.
I don't like that. Let's give you the example of you are a peasant who is just holding a sword for the first time in your entire life. I am a master swordsman. We both have a 5% chance that we're going to stab ourselves in the foot with this sword.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
You have now chances. I mean, I'm going to add my skill bonus, of course, which is going to be like 30 compared to yours.
But it doesn't even matter because in some systems, when you roll a 1, it's automatic.
In a lot of systems, or when you roll a 20, it's automatic. So all of a sudden, you know, the guy with let's take the same example. I'm a master swordsman. You're a peasant who's never held a sword. We're fighting a dragon that neither of us can harm, but we both have the exact same 5% chance of an automatic hit.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It doesn't make any sense. It's quite heroic, I think.
It can be heroic. Some people argue for the heroic aspect because it tends to give you extremes. So sometimes it's a really, really good hit because you rolled a 20, and sometimes it's a terrible, terrible miss because you rolled a 1. Personally, I like the numbers to average out somewhere in the middle.
As do I. It makes it feel more realistic.
Realistic.
Well, someone with a level of training in something, they're going to be able to accomplish that task at that level of training. Usually, they're not going to vary a whole lot from whatever their level of training is.
I agree, because if I have trained my sword skill up to 5, or my attack, so to speak, then all of a sudden my sword skill on any given day, any given swing, is anywhere from a 6 to a 25.
That's a big range.
That's a huge range.
Yes, it is.
That's a huge range. So if you introduce a dice pool, all of a sudden the more dice you roll, the higher the probability that you're going to average out at a median level.
Right.
So I have actually run games that were originally D20 with a dice pool system. And what I did was use two 10-sided dice. Absolutely. And I ran a Star Wars game with Saga Edition rules.
Right.
And I used 2 10-sided dice. You got a critical success if you roll 2 10s. And you got a critical failure if you roll 2 1s. It happens sometimes, but not very often.
Yeah, the chance is much less. I think it's in the range of 1% instead of 5.
Exactly 1%, yes. And the neat thing was that at any given time, your roll was going to average out at about a 10. Actually, 11, I think, according to probability.
I believe it's 11.
But so all of a sudden, you're always going to get about an 11. You'll get a little bit less, a little bit more. Every once in a while, you get those really good rolls or those really bad rolls. But you can always count on about an 11.
Right.
And to me, I think that makes a lot more sense. I think a Jedi should be able to go into a fight and have a pretty clear idea of what his skill is capable of.
Oh, of course. Jedi trained for years.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many of us have been cursed by our D20s, but I know I have.
I have.
I think they know I hate them, and that's why they don't roll well for me.
I could empathize with that. Yes. Yes. I believe my D20s have the same bad feelings towards me.
So, when you roll a lot of dice, a dice pool, for something like a World of Darkness game, you use a big pool of D10s.
Right.
For something like Exalted, all of a sudden you're rolling 20 or 30 D10.
Yeah, it's getting into the realm of absurd.
That's absurd. Agreed. But for even something like even Savage Worlds, you roll your skill die, which is anywhere from a 4 to a 12.
Yes.
You roll that skill die, and then you always add your wild die as well. So all of a sudden you're rolling your D8 firearms and a D6, which is your wild die.
Yes.
It's still a dice pool. You
It
still
is.
have an average. You're probably not going to roll a 1 on both of them to get a critical failure.
Right. The odds are much less.
What do you think about dice pools that call for counting successes compared to dice pools that just take the higher die or the total of the dice?
That's a good question. I will say that I like systems that use the success mechanic because it's easy to look at the dice and say, oh, I was 3 successful or I was 5 successful. You know, if I was 5 successful, it means I was a lot more successful than if I just rolled 1 success. And it's just an easy way for me to look at the dice and figure out how successful it was, and then I can translate that into role playing.
You know, I'll completely agree with that because if you take a system like D20, they have that to an extent because sometimes it'll say, in order to, you'll have like a skill challenge. In order to know this obscure fact about this orc tribe,
Right.
You have to roll against a DC 20. So you're trying to beat a 20. So if you get a 20, then you learn this obscure fact. If you roll a 25, like 5 over the difficulty, then you might get an additional bonus fact. If you roll a 30, you might get all of the information.
Yeah, I will say that I do like how they put that into the system.
So that does happen. What I don't like is that's causing you to do math. Okay, I beat the system. I rolled a 36. What did I need? Did I beat it by 5? I don't know if I beat it by 5. Hang on a second. Let me subtract and let me...
Right.
So it's not so bad when the difficulty is like 15, 20, 25. But sometimes the difficulty is 23. And you rolled a 26. And you say, okay, well, no, that's 3 points. Okay, that's not quite because it was 23, so I guess I didn't get that bonus.
Right.
Whereas if you're rolling pool of dice and you're just looking for, say you roll a bunch of D10s and you're looking for
an 8, 9,
anything
or 10.
that shows an 8,
right.
then if you have one die that shows an 8, that's a 1 success. That is a marginal success.
Yes.
If all of your dice show an 8, you probably did a better job.
Yeah.
And that's pretty easy and pretty visual right in front of you to count.
Yes, it is. And then you also asked how I liked systems that total dice.
Yes, some
dice
systems
pool.
do that.
I don't know that I've ever played a game that does that.
I'm trying to think of one straight off. I'm pretty sure that Mech Warrior does.
I've never played Mech Warrior.
Because you roll 2 dice and then total
them up. Now, I don't believe that I've ever played a system like that, so I can't really give an opinion. But Savage Worlds uses the system where you roll 2 dice, and then pick the highest.
Yes.
I do like that. It gives me a greater chance to succeed, but then I'm also just using 1 die. It's kind of a mix.
What about something like an Aegon? You'll roll several dice because you'll have a skill die, you'll have a die for your reputation, you'll have a die for the weapon that you're using, and you'll roll all of these dice and actually keep the highest.
I've played Aegon only twice, and each time I didn't actually get to finish the game. But
that's sad. We should direct this sometime.
Yes, we should. It's a very fun game that I've wanted to play all the way through. It's
pretty good.
Things have conspired against me, but I do like the way Aegon plays. Rolling that many dice, I have a much better chance of getting a result that I want.
I think so, and I mean, we've all played a lot of games, and we've played a lot of different systems, and sometimes the dice really do hate us. So it's not like if you're rolling 10 dice, all of a sudden you'll always succeed, because we've seen enough. I actually ran a game, and one of the characters rolled 17 dice 17 D10s and was looking for a single one of them to be 8 or higher, and none of them were. And actually resulted in a death on his character's part, which was pretty good. So even 17 dice isn't going to guarantee successes.
Oh.
You will still have those dramatic failures.
Yes, you will. You will have those times where fate conspires against you and nothing works the way it should. I think a couple werewolf games ago, I rolled 3 critical failures
In a row. Yeah.
It was absolutely insane, and it drove my werewolf to the brink of flipping out. I think he actually did flip out, kill somebody.
Yeah, he needless to say got very angry because he couldn't succeed at anything.
Yes. Both the player and the character.
Yeah. You didn't have to roleplay much in that situation. So I think, as far as dice pools go, I think they bring your average roll to a nice median level that you can count on in most situations.
Right.
While still allowing for the unusually good rolls and the unusually bad rolls.
So how would you take a system that only uses 1 die, and let's say someone wanted to change the mechanics somewhat so that they could use a dice pool, much like you did with the Star Wars Saga Edition? Is there anything else that you could do that with? I mean, D&D comes to mind because it's D20 as well. You could do that.
The easiest way to bring in that average result in a D20 game, because it's usually what games use that call for just a single die.
Okay.
Although some games like Mountain Witch, for example, just have you roll 1d6. So some games do that, and that would be a little harder, I think. But I think you can still do it, actually, now that I think about it.
Rolling 2d3s?
Well, you don't have 2d3s. So
Well,
you have to do it another way.
Yes, you would.
But in Star Wars, we rolled 2 d10s and just totaled them together, and the math was pretty simple because there were just 2 little numbers to add, so it didn't take any extra time.
Right.
And it definitely gave us that median result and worked really well for me. I liked it a lot, and some of my players were just used to their 20-sided dice, so they didn't like it as much. But some of them, definitely about half the group, thanked me for it quite a bit because they liked it a lot better that way.
I know that you and I have talked about this before, and it's something that I've been wanting to try. I just haven't, because we haven't really played very many D20 games.
There's a reason.
Yes.
There's a reason. But another way, if you didn't like just the 2 dice option, for example, another way that I could conceive to do it, just thinking about it right now, is you could say, like, the D20 system does tend to use difficulties of 10, 15, 25, 20,
right,
etc. So they have these increments,
okay,
these steps of difficulty. So perhaps each step of difficulty then requires 1 success to achieve. So now, when it comes time to roll, maybe everybody rolls 6 d6s. So now we're increasing your average. So you roll 6 6-sided dice, and any die that shows 4 or higher is a success. So in order to get that difficulty 10, you just need 2 dice to show 4 or higher. Not a problem on 6 dice. In order to get difficulty 20, all of a sudden you need 3 dice to show a success.
Difficulty 20 would be 4, 5.
Not if the base difficulty is 10. 10, 15, 20.
Gotcha.
And if the question is how would skills come into play, and skills could add an automatic success, so which actually would be really cool because
yes, it would.
If you had a master swordsman with, say, a skill 15, even just keeping the same character sheet that you're using in Dungeons & Dragons or Star Wars already, your master swordsman has like a plus 15 to hit, so he doesn't actually have to roll on anything that just has a DC of 15.
That's nice.
Then if it has a DC 20, he just needs 1 success to add to his already good sword skill.
It would cut the rolling down a lot.
Which I'm all for, especially in games with task resolution, where you roll to run, you roll to hide, you roll to pick the lock, You roll to escape with what's inside, which I have no problem with task resolution, but it requires a lot of rolls. So,
yes, it does.
Rolling just that single d20 is quick. Where you bring in dice pools, it can lengthen the roll a little bit because you're trying to count how many dice you need, especially in a game where you're rolling different numbers of dice at a time.
Right. Much
sometimes you say, was I rolling 7 dice to hit somebody, or was I only rolling 5? I don't remember.
Right. Makes perfect sense. Well, you got anything else you want to add?
For dice pools?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of.
I think
just that I heartily promote them.
I do too. Dice pools are good. You should use dice pools wherever you can.
They've improved my games. I can't say that they'll improve yours, but they've definitely improved mine.
Mine as well. Well, I think that's all we've got for this time. Thank you for listening to Sharkbone. You can email any questions or comments or topic suggestions to sharkbonecast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
See you next time.